What is going on, everybody? Shwazy here, and in today's video we're going to be discussing over 20 fun, cool, and interesting features of the brand new 2022 Chevy Traverse. Okay, if you haven't seen my full car review on this vehicle where I talk about all of the interior, exterior features, practicality, etc., I'm going to put that up on the screen somewhere in the corner so you guys can check that out because that goes into in-depth details on this car and everything you need to know. Today's video, we're just going to be highlighting some of the cool features that I may or may not have mentioned in that video because there's quite a bit with this pretty cool 3-row mid-size crossover, and so I figured I would make a separate video just highlighting the features rather than diving into some of the other things that are covered in that car review. So without further ado, and in no particular order, let's start with the first feature of this 2022 Chevy Traverse. Okay, now since we're up here, let's talk powertrain, and this does have hydraulic struts, unlike the Equinox I reviewed where you had an actual bar to hold up the hood, so that's really nice right there. This thing comes with one powertrain option. That is a 3.6-liter naturally aspirated V6 engine that produces 310 horsepower and 266 pound-feet of torque. That's actually a pretty good number for a vehicle of this segment. The only ones that really do much better than that are the Hemi V8s inside of Jeeps and Dodge. But other than that, this is close to being a class leader for the 3-row crossover segment. And overall, it's a pretty good engine. In terms of 0 to 60, it's about 6.9 seconds, which is wickedly quick for a vehicle of this size. And fuel economy isn't bad either. It's 17 in the city, 25 in the highway for a combined 20 mpg. And with the trailering equipment package, this vehicle can tow up to 5,000 pounds, which is a good amount of weight. Now, for the next feature, let's jump inside and talk about something that every single car reviewer has to talk about because it's a really cool feature on this Traverse, and that is this. Yep, the screen goes up and opens up a little James Bond-like storage compartment where you could hide a wallet, a phone, some cash, maybe even a small purse or something like that, and then you can just hide it out of plain sight. And that way, yes, you can definitely hide something down here in the center console, but nobody would ever really think to look underneath the screen, well, unless they watch this video. So there should be less car reviewers talking about this, so I'm part of the problem. I realize that. But anyways, that is a cool feature, and it really does just look like something out of a movie. When James Bond does stuff like this, you're like, oh, no car ever has that. Well, the 2022 Traverse does, so that's pretty cool. Now, while we're up here, let's talk about this screen because that's the next feature I want to discuss is the functionality of the software. It really is probably one of the best among its competitors. Now, the screen is only 8 inches, so it's not the largest among its competition, but it's got to be like the quickest and the snappiest in terms of responsiveness. It's just a very well-made software, and everything is super accessible. You've just got this main menu with just a couple different slides, and that's it. And then everything else is just accessible using these quick buttons down here where you've got your music, you got your Bluetooth, you've got your navigation and your climate, and you can control the front and the rear climate using this front display. And what I really like is you can actually download some apps here, and they have a lot of different options from Spotify, Pandora. You've even got like New York Times and Wall Street Journal. So lots of different options with this screen. And again, it's one of the best in its segment. Another thing to point out on this center display is you do have wireless and wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And given that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto oftentimes drain your battery a lot, there is this really conveniently placed wireless charger right below the center climate controls. and it's just a really nice place because it actually holds your phone in its position so it doesn't slide around when you're driving down the road. Now, the next neat feature has to do with how wide the opening is on this second row door. I mean, it's almost perpendicular to the front row. It's a pretty wide opening, and the reason it has that is because this is a 3-row SUV. Now, the next feature I want to discuss has to do with getting access to that third row, more specifically the way the seat actually slides forward. What's interesting about this design is you can actually still have a car seat in this second row, and you don't have to remove it in order to gain access to that third row. You simply keep it in place. You just pull on this handle and the entire unit slides forward, and that way you can actually gain access into the inside without having to remove that car seat. Now, one complaint I do have is that feature or that functionality is only available on the passenger side. Coming over to the driver's side, you unfortunately do not have that same functionality. You just have this lever here that you pull and the seat folds down, but you can't really access the third row this way because you have your seat over here, so you kind of have to slide it forward and finagle it, or you have to go through this middle section since this particular trim level has the captain's chairs. But other than that, I don't get why they didn't do the exact same thing on the driver's side and the passenger side. It just would have made more sense to me. Now, for the next cool feature, I want to step outside and talk about the exterior styling, more specifically the front end. So as of 2022, this is a facelifted Traverse, and Chevy actually made quite a few changes to the front end that I want to discuss. First off, you would actually assume that this top section of the light is the headlight itself, but that's actually not true. This is just simply a daytime running light and your turn signal, and your headlight is actually located down here in the bottom housing, almost where you would typically find a side marker light. That is where Chevy chose to put the headlights, and that's a little bit different than the pre-facelift version, because the pre-facelift had your daytime running lights and your headlight over here with some side marker lights or maybe even fog lights down here below. So that is a little bit of a different styling choice, and this is something that Chevy has done on the Blazer, and some other manufacturers have done this as well. It's kind of up in the air whether you like it or don't, but I do think that Chevy integrated it really well into this lower section, so I don't mind it, although I probably would have preferred having the headlights located in their traditional spot near the grille. Next, let's just talk about styling in general, because this has been newly refreshed as of 2022 with this new headlight design and this new front grille where you have this chrome that kind of separates into two pieces from the front and the bottom section. It's a little bit different than the pre-facelift version. And coming over to the side, you have quite a few different new wheel choices, and you have power adjustable fold-in mirrors. Now, the rest of the side remains mostly unchanged. You have that cool body line that goes from front to back, and you have that rear quarter panel window that wraps around to the rear windshield, making it look kind of a little bit more sporty, separating the front end from the back end. Now, coming over to the back, that's where they made a few other changes, more specifically with these LED taillights, which personally I really love the way they look at night. They light up really nice, and they have this kind of LED light that kind of just shapes around this housing over here. It looks really good. Other than that, they just changed this chrome into kind of two different colors. You have a dark chrome and a light chrome over here, especially on this RS trim level, and they've updated a little bit of the back end, but most of those are reserved to the taillights and that chrome strip. And you do have dual exhaust tips on this vehicle, even though this is just a 3.6 liter V6, but it gives it a little bit of a sportier appearance to it. Next, let's talk about the rear view mirror. Now, this is a feature that Chevy has had on other models as well as Cadillac, but it's still cool to point out. So you do have just a regular rear view mirror, as you can see the camera in the mirror itself, but then with the flip of a switch, it turns into a camera, and that way you cannot actually see the camera aside from the reflection off the screen. But this is showing me exactly what's behind me, but rather than using the mirror and you could see the two seats in the back, you can actually just use a camera that's located on the liftgate itself. And it's a really nice feature because you can actually have somebody sitting back here and not protruding their head into your visibility. So it's a great safety feature. And there's lots of different functionality here. You can adjust the brightness. You can also adjust the zoom, so you can zoom in and out. And you can adjust the height of where you're looking as well. So really cool functionality there. And then if you don't like it, you just flip it back and it's a regular rear view mirror. Now, in my experience with driving this vehicle with this digital display, it was hard to get used to because you're so used to depth perception with seeing several seats located behind you that when you're seeing a car right up next to you, it kind of takes a little bit getting used to. You can't really tell how close they are because you're just not used to looking so closely behind the lift gate. So just keep that in mind. And I noticed some people do get motion sick looking at this and driving down the road. So just be careful. It kind of depends on the person, but I just think it's a really cool feature to have regardless of whether you use it or not. And I like that it has the functionality of being on or off if you prefer it to. Now, in case you're wondering where this camera is located exactly, it's right below the Chevy bow tie on the rear lift gate. And this is your backup camera on the left, and this is your rear camera mirror on the right. And the other nice thing is, since they're located both back here underneath the Chevy bow tie, when you turn on your rear windshield wiper, it will actually also spray the rear two cameras as well. So you can make sure your backup camera and your rear view mirror camera are both clean in case you're driving in some dirty conditions. Now, the next really awesome feature of this vehicle, which in my opinion is also one of the best in its segment, is the 360-degree camera system. Now, I've mentioned this in my Equinox review, and it's just as good in this vehicle as well. You have plenty of different angles, front and back. You've got this bird's eye view or drone footage of you almost hovering above your vehicle. You've got a trailer hitch location, so it makes it very easy, especially with this vehicle coming with the trailering equipment package, to be able to load up a hitch to the back. And for your front and rear angles, you can either do a direct view or a top-down view, and the same applies to the side front and the side back as well. You also have different types of guidelines and trajectories. This one shows you where your wheels are going. This is if you have a trailer. And then if you just want to see the camera by itself, you have no grid lines as well. And you can also shut off the 360-degree camera if you get tired of it as well. Overall, just a very intuitive system with lots of different functionality. My only real complaint about the 360-degree camera is you kind of have to hunt for it on the center display, and it's not just located with either a physical button, or what would be even better perhaps is having it just down here in the quick access buttons. You could have the 360 camera and maybe it would turn it on, but unfortunately you don't have that functionality, and that was a complaint I had with the Equinox as well. The other option is maybe they could have just put in a physical button somewhere over here or down here, and that would have made it a little bit better as well. Now, another cool feature that comes on this RS trim level is this fold-in side view mirrors. So with the push of a button, perhaps you're pulling into a tight parking spot or you have it parked and you don't want somebody knocking your mirrors, you can push that button and it folds automatically inwards. Now, I wasn't able to find anywhere in the infotainment screen or the instrument cluster where you could turn that feature on when you lock the vehicle. From my understanding, you can only activate it by pushing this button down here, which is located above the automatic windows, and that's the only way to activate it. I do wish they had that with a lock feature rather than a manual button. Okay, now let's talk about how many cup holders come in this 7 to 8 passenger mid-size crossover. You've got 2 over here at the front. You've actually got potentially 1 more in each door pocket on the driver and the passenger side, just located right over in this compartment over here. I have put in a little coffee mug, or you could easily put in a water bottle, but I think it's meant to be for an umbrella, but you could just put a water bottle in there. So that means 4 up in the first row. There are actually 2 more on each passenger and driver side rear doors. So you've got 1 located over here and another one similar to the front row where you could put either an umbrella or likely a water bottle as well in that storage compartment. So that's 2 over here, and then you've got the same functionality on the passenger side, 1 in the top of the door and 1 in the bottom. So that means a total of 4 in the back. So 4 up front, 4 in the back. That's 8 total so far. And moving into the third row, you've got potentially 4 more, but really just 2, 1 over here on the driver's side and then 1 over here on the passenger side. So that's a total of 10 cup holders, although you could probably fit 1 more over here in the storage compartment. It's just not very deep, so maybe a juice box or something like that, but for the most part there's only 10 real cup holders in the 2022 Chevy Traverse. Now let's talk about how many USBs are in this 8-passenger vehicle. There's 1 over here on the third row on the passenger side, another 1 on the driver's side, so that's 2. Then moving into the second row, you've actually got 2 more underneath the climate control, so that's 4 for the second and the third row. And then the last 2 are located right below the climate controls of the front row and next to your 12-volt power adapter over here. So that's a total of 6 USBs for up to 8 passengers. I do wish they had maybe 2 more USBs, perhaps maybe 1 or 2 inside of this center arm console, but other than that, 6 is still a lot considering you do have a wireless charger over here as well, and you do have a power outlet located back here. So while we're on the subject, let's jump to the back and let me show you what that looks like. Back here below the climate control vents and next to the USBs is just your regular 120 volt household adapter. So the fact that you have that and a wireless charger and 6 USBs, you're gonna have plenty of power back here to charge all of the devices in the vehicle. I also pointed out on the Chevy Equinox I reviewed is you do have this adjustment knob located on the front passenger row, actually the driver's seat. And what's nice about this, what I like about it, is the fact that you can actually adjust the height of the lift gate from the front row without having to go to the back and risk already hitting your lift gate if you're in a low ceiling area and adjusting it on the lift gate itself. I just think it's so much smarter to have a quick and easy knob over here so you don't have to worry about dinging your lift gate or having to try to figure out how to adjust it on the infotainment screen. It's super accessible, super intuitive, easy to use. Now, while we're back here, I want to briefly talk about a cool feature they have back here. So obviously the floor of the trunk also lifts up, and that adds, from what I've understood, 3.2 cubic feet of space located underneath the floor. But the feature I want to talk about is the fact that this thing will actually stay in place. So as you can see, it's not falling back. You know, you can actually lock it in place so that this lid does not fall back on top of you. It's nothing crazy, nothing super revolutionary, but it's really nice that you don't have to worry about fumbling down here while this lid is falling on top of you, so you can easily load some things in with both hands, and then you can shut the lid. Just a really nice additional feature that you don't see on very many other vehicles. Speaking of third row, another super easy thing back here is how to fold down this third row seat. You simply pull on this handle, and then it's typically a 2-hand operation, but I'm with a camera, so I'll show you how to do it. But as you're pulling on it, you can push down the seat rest and it folds right back down. And then to put it back up, it's the same procedure, just opposite. You pull on that and it's back in its locked position. Super easy, very nice to use, and you can do the same thing on the driver's side. Now, the next one is probably one of my favorite features in this vehicle, and that has to do with the upgraded 10-speaker Bose audio system in this car. You've got speakers located up here near the front of the dashboard, obviously on the door panels, and then also near the rear quarter panels as well. And I gotta say, this is a very, very good system. You can never really portray it very well through audio on a video, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play a clip right now. I'm gonna place the camera just behind this first row seat, and that way you can hear how well it envelops the sound and gives you a 360 feel as if you're actually in the concert or whatever you're listening to. Now, audio is very hard to capture on camera, like I said earlier, but this is an improvement to the upgraded Bose system that I had in the Chevy Equinox, which I mentioned was a little bit more front biased. This one does a much better job because you have more speakers surrounding you. So kudos to Chevy for pulling off a great sound system, and hands down one of my favorite features in this vehicle. Now, the next feature I want to talk about is nothing new for cars. It's been around for like 25 years, but it's the way it's done in this vehicle. And I'm talking about the voice activation system. In this vehicle's application, which is different than what I remember in the Equinox, when you push the voice activation button to summon a command, it kind of brings up this condescending voice as if you have distracted it from doing some sort of other task. And essentially it's just saying, "May I help you?" Take a listen to what I'm talking about.
Yes, yes.
The way it says yes just almost seems like I'm bugging the system for asking it a question. Most other voice activation systems I've used either alert you with like a sound or something, letting you know, okay, now you can talk, or maybe it'll say, oh, let me know a command or something like that. But I've never heard it say yes, as if it's questioning you on why you're asking it a question. Now, the next really cool feature about this vehicle has to do with the roof, more specifically, the Skyscape sunroof, which is what Chevy calls it. You've got this sunroof located above the driver and passenger compartment, and then you've actually got another sunroof that doesn't actually open, but it does have a sunshade and that is for the rear passengers. It's kind of this dual sunroof design. It looks pretty cool, but I do have a couple complaints with it. So first off, for this driver's side, the sunshade is manual operated. And in addition, you can't regulate where it stops. So it's either all the way closed or all the way open. You can't put it halfway. You can't put it a quarter of the way. It just open or closed, that's all you get. And it's a little bit aggressive and maybe unrefined in terms of when you open it, you just push that button and it just quickly snaps back. I feel like Chevy could have done a better job in that implementation. And what makes it odd is the second row has this automatic sunshade. And so I don't get why they didn't make the front row automatic when the rear one is automatic. So it seems like the second row passengers are getting a better system than the front row. Now, the front row does open up and it is fully automatic, which I really like. And you can also tilt it automatically with a push of a button. But coming back to the second row, you actually have to hold down the button in order for this sunshade to open and close. So if I let it go, it only opens halfway or wherever I let go of the button. Whereas the actual sunroof will open up automatically with just a one touch. So it's just odd how some things here are automatic, some things are one touch, some things you have to hold down, and other things are manual. It's just, there's like 4 different options in this little section over here, and it just makes it confusing because it's hard to keep track of it all. Now, the other thing I want to mention is I kind of wish they just did a larger panoramic sunroof over here and maybe just had the front portion open and keep the back portion just fixed as it is. But the way it sits right now, you've got a pretty small sunroof above the driver's side, and then you've got a pretty small sunroof for the second row, and then you've got no sunroof for the third. You could put these air vents a little bit more to the left and right side so it doesn't impact it. And that way the third row can still actually look out and not mainly look at this section, but they would look out into the sky. But nonetheless, it is still cool to have a second row sunroof. And I also like the name with them calling it a skyscape. Speaking of the second row, this vehicle does come with 3-zone climate control. So you've got the driver's side, the passenger side with its own temperature. And then coming to the second row, you've got your own climate control for the back with different modes. You've got an auto, you've got different settings for feet, for head, for both, or you could just turn it off entirely. And you've got your own temperature control. And in case you're wondering, the vents are located right above the 2 seats in the second row and right above the seats in the third row. So they are not mounted over here. And I kind of like it when the vents are up above you because then you can actually feel the airflow on your face. But that's a nice feature that you have 3-zone climate control on the Traverse. Now, the next set of features I want to talk about has to do with safety. This vehicle has a lot of different safety features. Aside from pretty much fully autonomous driving or something like Chevy Super Cruise, this vehicle pretty much has everything else. You've got obviously adaptive cruise control. You've got a distance indicator so you can tell how close you are to the vehicle in front of you. You've got pre-collision warning. You've even got this little indicator over here that lights up if you're about to crash into something and will flash some lights onto the windshield. If you guys are curious what that looks like, I actually caught that on camera when I did my Chevy Equinox review, and it's the same system over here in the Traverse. You do have lane keeping assist over here that you can turn on and off, and then obviously, like we mentioned, the rear camera, but you've got rear cross traffic alert, rear pedestrian alert, and you've got blind spot monitoring over here and lots of other safety features that I'm sure I am forgetting. But all in all, the only thing this doesn't have aside from autonomous driving, a lane centering version. So the Kia Carnival I reviewed would actually keep the vehicle centered inside of the lane and it would actually follow traffic. This vehicle does not have that type of functionality yet. I imagine they're going to introduce that in the future, especially with Chevy Super Cruise having that type of technology, but it's just not implemented in this Traverse. Now, the next smart feature, which I also enjoyed in the Equinox, is the auto start stop functionality. So you actually have on the tachometer where it will show you whether the vehicle is actually off, like you just saw, or if the auto start stop is engaged. And I really like that because this auto start stop feature is extremely quiet. Even though it's a 3.6 liter V6, it doesn't shake the interior of the cabin. It's got to be one of the best that I've witnessed in different vehicles. And so it's nice to know if the vehicle is actually off or in the auto start stop mode. And the other nice thing is you can actually shut it off, since a lot of people hate the auto start stop because it kind of jolts you. But again, like I said, this one does not jolt you as much as other vehicles. Now, the next feature I want to talk about is a feature I really enjoy about this vehicle, something that maybe I enjoy just as much, if not more than the 10-speaker Bose audio system, and that has to do with the ride quality. I talked about this in my review of the Equinox, but I am really surprised with how well Chevy has done in terms of ride quality, interior cabin noise, and just general comfort inside of the cabin. The ride quality of this vehicle definitely punches above its weight. I mean, this does not ride like what you would expect an entry-level brand to ride like. This rides more like a luxury vehicle. And I think that has to do with the fact that the underpinnings of this car are used for the Buick Enclave, the Cadillac XT6, and some more of the premium brands, and so they automatically made this one a little bit more premium just because it's the same platform. And I gotta say, it's really, really comfortable. I drive over some really bumpy roads, and you cannot feel it in this vehicle, or at least not as much as some of the competition. Okay, so those are over 20 cool and interesting fun features of the 2022 Chevy Traverse RS. If you guys are in the market for a Chevy Traverse, or really any Chevy product, you should definitely check out their inventory and build your own on the website. Huge thank you to Chevy for giving me the opportunity to review this vehicle for you all today. It really is a very cool looking vehicle that is a great competitor to some of the newer entrants in this market, like the Kia Telluride, the Jeep Grand Cherokee L, and the updated Nissan Pathfinder, among the dozen other vehicles. I can see why Chevy sells over 100,000 units of this vehicle every single year, and I especially like this newly restyled version here for 2022. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, I'd really appreciate if you like this video. And if this is your first time stopping by, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can stay on top of all of the weekly car videos. You can also find me on all of the social media. I'll put the links down in the description below. It's at Schwazy_. And as always, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day.